Welcome to the deep dive. Go ahead and pull up a stool.
Make yourself comfortable.
Yeah, grab a drink. So tonight, I want you to imagine a startup, like a scrappy operation that goes from a completely chaotic garage to the biggest, wealthiest tech giant in the world.
Right.
But then, it ends up being completely liquidated, just totally bankrupted because the regional managers got way too ripped and the CEO, well, he basically wouldn't stop flirting.
It's like a classic story, really.
It is. So, welcome to the Great Tang Group. We're looking at the Tang Dynasty from the years 618 to 907. But honestly, forget the boring dates and the dusty robes. I want you to picture this as a 289-year-long corporate bankruptcy.
That's certainly one way to frame it.
I mean, it works, right? We're examining this ancient mega corporation that had the most brutal shareholder infighting imaginable, but somehow, they still produced the absolute best cultural products of their era.
They really did. And it is a profound trajectory.
Yeah.
Because if you look past the modern workplace analogies we'll be throwing around tonight.
Which I will be using a lot of, just a warning.
Right. If you look past those, what you're actually tracking is a massive shift in global power. We're looking at how the very core of power in a society transforms.
On what to what?
From pure brute force to highly structured data-driven management to delegated authority and then finally to total systemic collapse.
Okay, so let's set the market conditions for phase one of the Great Tang Group, the years 618 to 626. I call this the startup and physical mergers phase. But looking at the notes here, to understand the Tang, we have to look at the company that just went bust, right? The Sui Dynasty.
Exactly. The Sui collapse left the political landscape completely fractured. You had millions of soldiers and farmers divided among competing warlords.
Just a massive power vacuum. Basically, it's a giant group chat where the admin just abruptly left the server.
That is a very apt way to put it. Total chaos.
Right. Everyone is frantically typing, trying to make themselves the new group owner. And into this vacuum steps our startup founders.
Well,
You've got this guy, Li Yuan. He's operating out of Taiwan, and he is the classic chairman of the board.
the figurehead.
Yeah, exactly. He's providing the seed funding, staying back at headquarters, signing the paperwork. But the real engine of this startup is his second son, Li Shimin.
Who was incredibly effective.
Unbelievably effective. Like, if Li Yuan is the chairman, Li Shimin is this aggressive, totally ruthless investment manager. But he doesn't just buy out competitors, guys like Wang Shichong or Du Jiande. He utilizes, well, I guess we'd call it physical acquisition.
He wiped them off the map.
Literally wiped them out. Hostile takeovers where the severance package is just a shallow grave. But I mean, in modern terms, how did he actually do that? Did he just have bigger swords?
No, the power core here wasn't just sharp weapons. It was a military framework called the Fubing system.
Okay, break that down for me.
It was essentially a militia system that tied land distribution directly to military service.
So they weren't like paying for a massive standing army out of pocket.
Right. They were handing out equity in the form of farmland.
Right.
And in return, the farmers had to show up with their own weapons and armor when the company went to war.
That is brilliant.
It was. The success of this first phase really came down to that dynamic. You had a visionary founder who could legitimize the enterprise, paired with this ruthless, boots-on-the-ground executive team.
Led by Shimin.
Exactly. They could leverage this militia system perfectly. Shimin neutralized all market competition through sheer tactical brilliance. They didn't negotiate, they just eliminated the competition.
Brutal, but effective. Which brings us to the inevitable problem, right? Phase two. The nepotism problem and the Golden Age reorg. This is 626 to 690.
The succession crisis.
Yeah, put yourself in Li Shimin's shoes for a second. You just physically acquired the entire market. You've been, sleeping in the mud, dodging arrows, building this massive company from scratch.
Doing all the actual heavy lifting.
Right. And the company is finally stable. So who gets the corner office? The old chairman, Li Yuan, promises the CEO position to his eldest son, Li Jiancheng.
Because that was the traditional right.
Sure, but meanwhile, the star performer Shimin is expected to just smile, be a good little VP, and fall in line.
It's the classic tension. The inherited right to rule versus the meritocratic claim to power. The eldest son had the title, but the second son had the absolute loyalty of the military.
And in this particular family, that HR dispute turned into a shootout. the Xuanru Gate incident.
It was very bloody.
Oh, totally. Ximin realizes his brother is going to sit in the air conditioning while he does all the road warrior work. So at Xuanru Gate, Ximin just assassinates his brother.
He physically terminates the competition for the corner office.
Love that phrasing. And then he walks into his dad's office, literally still covered in blood, and forces the chairman into early retirement.
It's a very violent start to a tenure,
Yeah.
but it initiates what is known as the Zhenguan reign. And this is where the management analysis gets genuinely fascinating.
Oh, so?
Well, under Li Shimin, the power core fundamentally shifts. It moves away from military brute force because, frankly, he already won all the wars.
Right. There's nobody left to fight internal.
Exactly. So the core transitions to administrative efficiency and data-driven governance.
Okay, wait. I have to stop you. Data-driven governance in the 7th century. What does that actually look like? Are they using spreadsheets?
They use the equal field system. The state essentially owned all the land, right?
Yeah.
And they conducted these massive, incredibly detailed censuses to distribute that land to peasants based on household size and age.
Wow.
Yeah, they tracked demographics meticulously. In return, the peasants paid predictable taxes and provided labor.
Ah. Okay, so if we look at the geopolitical map, the Great Tang Group is running this advanced operating system. It allows them to scale up revenue and armies instantly without going bankrupt.
Exactly, while their neighboring competitors.
Like the nomadic Turkic confederations or the Korean kingdom of Goguryeo, they're basically still using pagers. They can't compete with that kind of bandwidth.
They really couldn't. Ximin implemented a system of strict oversight. He used what we would call KPI tracking for his officials.
KPI tracking, I love it.
He had a very famous chancellor, Wei Zhang. He essentially functioned as the director of internal auditing, or maybe head of HR.
Oh, I've read about this guy. Wei Jing was famous for just constantly criticizing Ximin, right?
Constantly. He would audit his decisions, point out his personal flaws in public.
Which usually gets you killed in the ancient world. Wei Zheng is that guy who clicks reply all to the company-wide email just to correct the CEO's grammar.
He really was.
Hmm.
But rather than executing him, Ximin listened. He recognized that a massive bureaucracy actually requires internal friction to avoid corruption.
That's real leadership.
It is. Ximin used that auditing to optimize the state. He pushed the borders out, expanded deep into Central Asia, and earned the title Heavenly Khan.
So he's essentially the ultimate global CEO at this point.
Basically. He had a monopoly on the known world because he replaced the arbitrary whims of a warlord with the structured bureaucracy of a real administrator.
Amazing. Just brilliant management. But, even the ultimate CEO eventually passes away. Which takes us to phase 3. The years 690 to 712, the era of the female temp CEO and the board revolt.
A very turbulent transition.
Yeah, because Ximin dies. And the next guy in line, Emperor Gaozong, gets chronically ill. He's always out on medical leave. So the power is just sitting there on a desk.
And as we know, nature, especially political nature, abhors a vacuum. When centralized power is left unattended, someone is going to pick it up.
Enter Wu Zetian. This is history's ultimate temp to CEO story. She starts out essentially as an executive assistant, right? A concubine in the inner palace. And she methodically takes over day-to-day operations.
She was brilliant.
But hold on, explain this to me. You have an all-male board of aristocratic legacy shareholders, guys who have run China for centuries. How does a female former executive assistant just take the chairman's seat without getting assassinated on day one?
By understanding that she couldn't rely on the existing corporate structure, she had to build a parallel one. She used a two-pronged strategy. First, she activated what were known as the cruel officials.
Which sounds lovely.
It was essentially a secret police force. Their explicit mandate was to terrorize and physically eliminate the old aristocratic families who opposed her.
Okay, so she activates a highly toxic HR department. There are no performance improvement plans here. You just disappear.
Exactly. But, terror alone doesn't run an empire.
True.
Her second mechanism was the real stroke of genius. She dramatically expanded the civil service examinations.
Okay, why does that matter?
Well, previously, high office was mostly inherited by those old aristocratic families. The legacy board, Wu Zetian opened up the testing process, recruiting talented scholars from lower-tier families who had absolutely no connection to the old guard.
Oh, that is ruthless.
Yeah.
She completely bypassed the legacy board by promoting these hungry interns who owed their entire careers and their lives to her. She even does a complete corporate rebrand. She changes the company name from Great Tang to Wu Zhu Pictures, or the Zhu Dynasty, and names herself Empress. But, I mean, how did the company actually perform under this reign of terror?
That is the vital takeaway here.
Right.
Despite the secret police and the brutal purges, her business metrics were absolutely flawless.
Really?
Yes. Agricultural output remained high, the borders were secured, and the economy was robust. She was a phenomenally effective manager because she promoted based on merit, not bloodline. She kept the company at the very top of the global market.
A completely toxic workplace, but the stock price has never been higher. I know some modern executives who would take that deal in a heartbeat.
Unquestionably.
But she couldn't outrun time. She gets to be over 80 years old, and the surviving original shareholders finally stage a board revolt. The Shenlong coup.
It forced her out.
Yeah, they force her into retirement and proudly hang the old Great Tang Group sign back up over the door. Which sets us up for phase 4, from peak market cap straight to the intensive care unit.
The turning point.
Yeah, the years 712 to 763. The rebranding is done. Emperor Swanzong Longji takes over. This is the Kaiyuan era. The company hits its absolute peak. Chongqing, the capital, is like ancient Times Square.
A truly cosmopolitan center.
You have foreign exchange students, you've got massive cultural influencers like the poets Li Bai and Du Fu, all flocking to headquarters. Everyone wants a job at Tang HQ. But what happens when a company gets a little too comfortable?
Complacency sets in. The power core shifts again, and this time it's fatal.
Where does it go?
It moves from a centralized visionary headquarters to decentralized rogue contractors.
Right, because the CEO completely stopped paying attention. Emperor Xuanzong gets completely distracted by an office romance with Yang Guifei. He stops reading the financial reports, he's skipping the quarterly earnings calls.
He delegated too much.
Way too much. Worse than the romance, he completely changes the security apparatus. Why did he start outsourcing the military to regional managers?
Remember that equal field system we talked about earlier?
Yeah.
The one that funded the militia?
Yeah, the data-driven land distribution.
Well, it broke down. The population grew significantly, but the amount of arable land obviously didn't. The government essentially ran out of equity to hand out.
Oh.
And without land, the peasants just stopped showing up for military service. So to protect these massive borders they had built, the central government had to shift from a citizen militia to hiring professional standing armies of mercenaries.
And to manage those mercenaries, they create these regional franchise managers, the Fanzhen. Guys like An Lushan, who was a general of Turkic and Sogdian descent.
Exactly.
Let me paint this corporate culture clash for you because it's hilarious. Down at HQ in Chang'an, you have a bunch of soft champagne-drinking executives writing poetry. I mean, they couldn't lift a stapler without pulling a muscle.
They were very disconnected from the reality of the borders.
Completely. Meanwhile, out at the regional franchises, it's packed with heavily armed, ripped mercenaries who do nothing but military reps all day. It's a disaster waiting to happen.
The central government essentially gave up its monopoly on violence. They handed the keys to the military over to non-Chinese generals on the periphery just to cut costs and avoid managing the borders directly.
And the cracks start showing immediately. They lose this skirmish way out west to the expanding Abbasid Empire at the Battle of Talis.
A significant loss.
But the corporate PR team just spins it as a minor overseas hiccup. Oh, we lost a little market share. No big deal. But the real threat is internal, right? And Lushan, this massive regional manager, looks at the soft executives at HQ and says, wait a minute, we have all the weapons, we do all the work, why are we sending all our profits back to these weaklings?
So he rebels. The Anxi Rebellion.
And that is the crash.
It was devastating. The rebellion lasted for years and decimated the population and the economy. But more importantly, it broke the illusion of central authority. HQ was exposed as entirely hollow.
The Tang Dynasty technically survived the rebellion, right?
Technically, yes.
Yeah.
But it was mortally wounded. It was never the same.
Which brings us to the final agonizing chapter. Phase 5. The franchise wars and total liquidation. The years 763 to 907. If you were sitting there with a massive company on life support, what is the classic desperate corporate move?
You squeeze your base employees?
Yeah. You squeeze your lowest level employees and your customers just to keep the lights on. Which leads us to the two-tax law. HQ is bleeding cash, so they introduced this. It sounds like a failing retail chain suddenly docking employee pay and raising prices just to fund the executive bathroom.
It was definitely a desperate move, but we should be clear about what the two-tax law actually was,
Right.
because it represents a massive structural shift in human civilization.
How so?
Since the state could no longer track everyone's headcount for the old equal field system.
Right, their data was corrupted.
Exactly. They gave up on taxing people directly and started taxing property and land area instead. They consolidated all these chaotic arbitrary fees into just two taxes collected in the summer and autumn.
Okay, that sounds more efficient, actually.
It kept the state alive, yes, but it officially admitted that the government no longer controlled the land. Wealthy landlords did.
Oof. And the management structure during this late Tang period just devolves into this ridiculous three-way brawl. Let me break down this org chart for you. First, you have HQ and the board. But it's no longer run by visionary founders. It's run entirely by the eunuchs.
It's a very dark period for the court.
Now, I have to stop here. I know eunuchs were castrated servants in the inner palace. How on earth did the HR department get the power to literally assassinate the CEO, the emperor at will?
Paranoia.
Paranoia.
After the Anshi Rebellion, the emperors simply no longer trusted their own generals. They were terrified of military men. So they decided the only people they could trust with the elite palace guards, the Shen's army, were their personal castrated servants.
Because they figured eunuchs couldn't start their own dynasties.
Exactly. They thought it was a safe bet. It catastrophically backfired. The eunuchs now controlled the military, which meant the nominal head of state was basically a hostage to his own administrative staff.
That is unbelievable. So the administrative assistants have a private army. That's Faction 1. Then you have Faction 2, the regional franchises, the warlords, the fanzine.
Who are totally ignoring HQ at this point.
Completely. They're keeping their own tax revenue. They're hiring their own muscle. If HQ sends an email, it goes straight to spam.
They were effectively independent states.
Right. And then you have Faction 3, the base employees, the peasants, the gig workers of the ancient world who are getting brutally squeezed by those wealthy landlords and that two-tax law.
And when the base employees realize that neither HQ nor the regional managers are going to protect them, you get a systemic structural collapse from the bottom up.
The final strike. Enter a guy named Huang Chao. Think of him as a candidate who spent years studying, but he failed the civil service exams. He doesn't get the cushy corporate gig at HQ.
So he takes matters into his own hands.
Yeah, in response to that rejection letter, he organizes a massive union strike of millions of disgruntled peasant gig workers, and he marches right on headquarters. He literally burns Chang'an to the ground.
The ultimate bad Glassdoor review.
Huh, exactly.
The Huangchao Rebellion completely gutted whatever illusion of wealth and power that Tang still had. It physically destroyed the aristocratic families that had survived for centuries. It was a brutal leveling event.
The company was functionally dead.
It just needed someone to sign the bankruptcy paperwork.
Which brings us to Zhu Quanzong. Now, Zhu is a former employee of Huang Chao's union strike. But during all the chaos, he flipped and took a job working for Tang HQ. He climbs the ranks, builds his power. But eventually, he looks around at the flaming wreckage of the company.
There wasn't much left to save.
No. He looks at the eunuchs fighting the warlords. He looks at the destroyed capital, and he just says, yeah, we're done here. He fires the last child CEO of the Tang, declares himself the boss of a new company, and liquidates the Great Tang Group. The year is 907 AD. Bankruptcy is officially declared.
It is a sobering trajectory. If we look at the entire 289-year run, the core lesson here is structural.
Lay it on me.
It doesn't matter how incredible your cultural product is. It doesn't matter if you have the greatest poets, the most cosmopolitan cities, or the best branding in the world.
Right.
If your internal management structure rots, if you stop paying attention to the data, if you rely on outsourced muscle because your executives are too distracted by vanity and luxury to govern, your empire will eventually be hostilely taken over by your own employees. The center must hold, or the periphery will consume it.
Wow. I couldn't have said it better myself. Just a completely bleak descent from competence to extreme complacency.
I'm pouring one last imaginary drink right here for the fallen Great Tang Group.
Cheers to that.
From a ruthless family startup with a brilliant operating system, to an aggressive tech giant, to a bloated bureaucracy hijacked by its own administrative assistants, and finally, total liquidation. It really makes you look at your own office politics a little differently, doesn't it?
It definitely puts a bad staff meeting into perspective. It does. Which leaves me with a question for you, listening right now. If you were stepping in as a turnaround CEO for a massive company today, what specific warning signs from the Great Tang Group's collapse, Maybe extreme delegation or executives totally distracted by vanity projects? What would make you instantly fire your leadership team?
Something to ponder.
Exactly. Think about that the next time you're staring at the wall in a really boring all-hands meeting. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll see you next time.